Welcome back, everyone. This is obviously Bro JMR Productions, and we have a brand new Our 3 Cents for you.
What's up, guys?
The movie we reviewed this week is one that I personally love because I'm a metalhead. I am a 80s hair metalhead.
Yeah, be more specific.
Nessie, this one's for you. This is one specifically was requested, gosh, over a year ago. When we first started by one of my good friends, Nessie. And so this is for you. Rockstar. Mark Wahlberg, Jennifer Aniston. The story of a wannabe who got to be.
Yep.
Now, Jonathan has not seen this movie since it came out 13 years ago, which is, for movie-loving nerds like us, is an eternity.
Yeah.
So,
I actually saw this because he brought it over to my parents' house, brought it one time, and said that we should watch it. So we all sat down and watched it. And I actually didn't even think about it for a long time until I moved back down here with him. And I saw that he had it, and it was one that was always in my mind, like, I should watch that movie again. But I just kind of never got to it, you know? Because, I mean, it's hard to choose when you have 1,200 movies or whatever are discounted.
it's more about 800 and something, but
whatever.
it feels like 1,200 sometimes,
Yeah.
especially when you have to catalog them all. So, I'll start off and say, after 13 years, what did you think of it?
Still awesome. It's I'm not even really sure how I want to put it, but I mean, it's a great movie, and it's a great story, and it's well acted, and all those good things. But more than that, it's just one of those movies that you can't help but like when you watch it, you know? I mean, it's just great. It's just a fantastic movie all around. And you start to think about it and you realize what makes it so great, but it's just such...
Hey!
Stop that, cats. But it's such a well-rounded movie. That's really the crux of it. So
I first heard of this movie. Now, I've seen it several times since it came out. But I first heard about this movie, I was watching MTV once, way back in the day.
it was the only time he ever watched MTV. It was an important day.
It was an important day. I think it was blah, 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 2000, blah. And they did a special or something on it. You know how MTV does their weird little special things about movie. And I saw this, I was like, oh my God, this looks awesome. And I turned to the ex-wife, I was like, we have to go see this movie. And so we did. And it was awesome. One of the things that was so great about it, which we'll touch on a little bit later, is the music. I actually went out the very next day and bought the soundtrack. And as soon as we got a release date for it, I pre-ordered it like the day we got the pre-order release for it. So, awesome. Love it. It's a great story. Mark Wahlberg does an excellent job in this movie.
Now here's a question for you. At the time of its release, what did you think about Mark Wahlberg starring in it? Because he, you know, this was 13 years ago. He wasn't as proven as he is now. He had only done a couple of things. You know, he'd done Fear by that time, and he was fantastic in that movie. But what did you think of him carrying the movie and playing a rock star?
I think he totally owned it, because I mean, obviously he's already a musician anyway, I mean, granted, it's, you know, hip hop that he did before.
And can I just interject that it is way past time for Marky Mark to come back and put out a new album, just because I think it'd be hilarious. He's so respected and well known now. It would be a big fu to Hollywood. Be like, yeah, I'm gonna make a new rap album. It would be hilarious. I would totally buy it.
New Kids on the Block came back out. Why not?
Right.
His brother came back and did stuff. So,
Right.
but I had seen Fear, of course, but I saw also Boogie Nights, which
Had that been out by that time?
yeah, Boogie Nights came out in 1997,
Oh, okay.
and he owned that movie, and so knowing what I knew after seeing Fear, which, you know, he wasn't the main role, but he was kind of a supporting role. I knew he could handle it.
But he took over that film.
Yeah, he
Fear. Even as a supporting role, he took over that film. That was his movie.
And we're not going to talk too much about that because I think that's going to be the next one that I do for my own personal reviews. So, talk about the rest of the cast real quick. Mark Wahlberg, Jennifer Aniston, Timothy Olyphant,
Timothy Spall.
Timothy Spall, and there is tons of people who are actually musicians in this.
And you made a list, so
yeah, let's go with it. Let's run through this real quick.
We also forgot Dominic Cooper is in it.
Yes.
And as the other main actor.
The main band, Steel Dragon, we have Jeff Pilson, bass
Pilson.
player from Dokken.
Who now is in Foreigner.
Yes. Jason Bonham, son of the great John Bonham, plays drums. And the guitar player for Steel Dragon, 2 words for you, Zakk Wylde. Enough said. Blood Pollution, which was Chris Cole, Mark Wahlberg's cover band. We have Nick Cantonese, guitar player for Black Label Society. Blas Elias, drummer for Slaughter. Bryn Vander Ark, bass player for Verve Pipe. And
Really?
then the guy who took over for Chris when he left the band, Stephen Jenkins, vocals for Third Eye Blind. There's also a guy in it by the name of Miles Kennedy. He played a character named Thor. He came up on stage when Izzy decided to quit Steel Dragon. He is the vocalist for Alter Bridge. Let's see. And I mentioned this to Jonathan. There's a...
He teased me with this.
I teased you with this. There is a character named Ralph who auditions for Steel Dragon right before Chris Cole goes in. And I asked him, who is this? You know this person. Who is this?
I could not for the life of me get it. His face looked so familiar. And he told me he was a musician, and I barely got to hear his voice, so I couldn't relate it to that. But I couldn't do it, and I stopped myself from looking on IMDb because he wanted to do this big reveal because he's a torturous asshole like this sometimes.
I am not. So the guy who plays Ralph, the guy who is the audition, his actual name is Ralph Saenz. And you know him better as a rock star in his own right named Michael Starr. I'll give you the initials to the band. SP. They once ranted about how there should be death to all plus metal.
Seriously? That's the lead singer of Steel Panther? That is the coolest fucking thing ever!
He's in a band called Steel Panther, and he auditioned for a band named Steel Dragon. How bitchin' is that?
And Steel Panther is a band that came out in the 2000s as a throwback to classic 80s hair metal. And they are.
Yes.
I don't care what anybody says, Steel Panther is one of the best hair metal bands ever. They just, didn't exist in the 80s.
Yes.
They should have. Somebody needs to get a time machine so they can go back and
Actually live the 80s.
kick Rats and Warren's ass. Because I'm sorry, who cares about Rat and Warrant?
They even mentioned in the movie.
Yeah, they mention Rat in the movie, and it's hilarious because I'm like, Rat.
He said rat. So, obviously, with a huge musical backbone
Yeah,
to this, you know this movie is going to kick the shit out of everything.
and it does, especially music-wise. It's so incredibly 80s. I mean, it is like the 80s threw up on this movie. It's great.
Yeah. So the acting was great. So like we said, Mark Wahlberg does a great job. Jennifer Aniston does a good job. She's second billed in this movie, but she doesn't really have that big of a part, considering she leaves about halfway through the movie and you don't see her again until the end.
Yeah. But she's an important character
Yes.
in the movie, even if she doesn't actually get a lot of screen time. You know, even after the point where she leaves, you're watching the rest of the movie, just keeping her in your mind that she's out there. She's going to come back and play an important part somehow.
We have to
And-
wait for it.
Yeah, she doesn't come back to play that important part, but her character plays another important part at the end.
Yes. Movie, like the end of this movie, there is redemption.
Yeah, in this movie, he
He's-
steps away.
He bows out gracefully.
Yeah,
And
Yeah.
he starts his own band, and which is one of the big things in the very beginning of the movie. You know, they're talking about how, you know, wouldn't you rather fail as yourself than succeed as somebody else?
yeah.
And he does.
There's so many conversations in this movie between Mark Wahlberg and another character, any other character. It happens 4 or 5 different times about how, you know, he's pretending to be somebody else. You know, because Mark Wahlberg's character is obsessed with the lead singer of Steel Dragon. He copies his style, he copies his vocals, he knows everything about the band, he knows every song. And he's in a tribute band for them. He's trying to be the lead singer of Steel Dragon and ends up becoming it. But everybody around him is telling him, don't you want to be yourself? You're trying to be somebody else. And it's like a running theme throughout the whole movie, and he doesn't realize it until the very end.
Yep.
When something finally clicks. And I love the way they do it at the end.
Mm-hmm.
He sees the exact same thing that happened to him in the beginning of the movie. He's at the Steel Dragon, beginning of the movie, he's at a Steel Dragon concert singing along, and the lead singer takes notice, and they eventually end up contacting him. At the end of the movie, he's up there singing and notices somebody else singing along and just pulls him up on stage and walks away. And says, it's yours now, take over.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a great theme. It's a great lesson for life.
Yeah.
Be yourself. Don't be somebody else. But the end of the movie flows perfectly into real life. How hard rock music in the 80s, it eventually gave way to alternative.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what happens at the end of this movie.
That was a transition of the 80s.
Alternative and like coffee house type rock.
Mm-hmm. And that worked for the 90s. And the 2000s came around and hard rock started to claw its way back. And now we're in a weird transition phase now, it seems.
Yeah. Overall, man, if you want a fun, music-filled hour and a half of awesomeness, check out Rockstar.
You know, it's very much a throwback to the 80s in general,
Yeah.
the whole time period. You know?
Especially the 80s in music.
Yeah, especially the music scene. You know,
The excesses.
it really is such a great representation. Not even just talking about the actual rock star and the band, but the fans, you know, traveling long distances to see these guys.
Camping out at the house.
Being in a tribute band and putting flyers up at the real band's concert.
Mm-hmm.
You know, stuff like that.
Rockstar, great movie. It's finally coming out on Blu-ray.
Yeah, we just found out last night that it is finally making its way to Blu-ray.
See you next time. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you like us. If you don't like us, well...
Yeah.